All right. Welcome everyone to the No Cap recap. This is an emergency episode due to the ongoings in the soccer world right now, the football world. It's been a while since you've heard from us. If you don't know, my name is Milan. Alongside me is Bowen. Bowen, you want to say hello?
Yeah, thanks, Milan. It has been a long time indeed. The last time we formally sat down to record something like this would have been back in September, which was many moons ago. So I think this European Super League fiasco is called for this. It's a monumental sporting event. And yeah, we're here to talk about it.
Yeah, listen, the last, I'd say 72 hours have just been the most hectic sports news I've seen in the last 3 days ever. Like I've never seen like the world be put on hold like this. If you don't know what's happened, I'm gonna try to give a quick rundown of what exactly led to what's happened. So 12 of the biggest brands, I wouldn't say teams because there's clubs like Tottenham involved in this situation as well, but 12 of the biggest brands in the European footballing world decided they weren't interested in UEFA's idea of the Champions League anymore and decided to run their own invested league called the Super League, where 12 of these teams would be competing year in, year out with no consequences and getting an insane amount of money, with another three clubs that would be considered founding clubs and only five other teams that would be allowed to play. Um, Basically, UEFA didn't like that and had every domestic championship tell everyone you can't let them compete in your league. You can't. We're not going to let you compete in the Champions League. This, that, and the other. And a whole thing went down. And a lot of this comes down to who Florentino Perez. If you don't know who that is, that's Real Madrid's president, Real Madrid's owner. He decided to plan this out after years of, well, specifically this year, when he came out on an interview, he said that he had an issue with how UEFA has been helping people out during the COVID pandemic. A lot of people have been taking pay cuts. UEFA hasn't. It's time they take matters into their own hands. But as much as on paper this sounds like the clubs are doing the right thing, and it can be interpreted either way. Me personally, at least, I'm at this point on the fence. I could care less. I don't want a Super League. I'm not in support of a Super League, but I am very in support of anti UEFA at this point because of what UEFA has done for decades at this point. And this is not just on UEFA. This is on FIFA. This is decades in the making. This is a cause of what they've done, and they're getting the taste of their own medicine. Like a lot of people have said that there's no good guys here. It's just bad guys. There's just bad guys, and that's the perfect analogy to put for this. I don't know. What do you think, Bowen?
It's a very complex situation, and it's so many moving factors, right? This whole Super League was announced Sunday evening, so at least my time over in BC,
Yeah.
Sunday evening, and it just came out of nowhere. There had been rumors of this. There had been talkings in the media for it's been talked about for years, but to actually have it culminize and come together in just massive announcements from each of the clubs that were involved in such a short amount of time. That's what really took a lot of people by storm. That's what shocked a lot of people. But in the aftermath of this all, and we'll talk about it later, it looks like the Super League is set to fail before it even really gets off the ground here. It just the way it all came about is and how it was in the middle of the season. It wasn't after a league campaign had finished. It was in the middle of the Champions League. We're ramping up to the end of that competition, and so just how it quickly came about is what I think really got a lot of people's attention. And then also just the details of the tournament and of the league itself is what really started a lot of the anger surrounding this whole announcement, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's honestly, I wouldn't even say it's shocking. Like it is, but it isn't kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because like you got to look at, with all due respect, at least me and Bowen were Arsenal and Milan fans, right? I'd say us two have the least reason to want to be in the Super League per se, because this is made for the clubs like Real Madrid, the clubs like Barcelona, who have been struggling with debt over the years to break even, right? Me and your clubs, we haven't spent much, so we're not in much debt. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But the difference is that contrary to, I don't know, let's say in Everton, Arsenal is owned by Stan Kroenke. If you don't know who Stan Kroenke is, he's an American billionaire. He also owns the LA Rams, I believe.
LA Rams, Denver Nuggets, Colorado Rapids.
Yeah, and
many different sports franchises in the United States. Yep.
And that exactly right there is my issue. The fact that he owns franchises and Arsenal is a club. You know what I mean? Yep. American sports have always been about what, like, obviously sports have been a business for a very long time. That's why, in my opinion, when people say football won, we won, no one won. This game is long gone already. This is only a business. This is only a business. But the fact that teams are called franchises rather than clubs or teams, that, like, the Denver Nuggets are treated as if they're a Chick-fil-A. You know what I mean? But the Arsenal Football Club is a brand. Arsenal Football Club is, an establishment of European football that people around the world, you'll say Arsenal Football, they'll name you Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, Tony Adams, legendary players of the game. But Americans have decided to come in, and this all comes down to the rules that UEFA implemented. They allowed owners to come in, put in an obscene amount of money so these teams can succeed. Chelsea, and you brought up this personally on Twitter, and this is spot on from you. Chelsea and Man City were the first two clubs that kind of assumed that they're not assumed, but came out and said that they're out of it. They're the two clubs that have the most money out of everyone else in the competition. Exactly. Of course, they're going to want to get out first because they don't need this. They don't need this.
They don't need the money as much as other clubs would. And they see it as we're the first two to back out of this. This could we could recoup some good PR from this, but any praise that was going towards Manchester City or Chelsea, that's totally misguided. These clubs.
Where was this praise in 2003 when Abramovich bought Chelsea and then bought the league? Exactly. Where was this praise in 2008 when Sheikh Mansour bought Man City and then made them a dynasty that can't be stopped? Look at this season. Who's stopping Manchester City in the title race?
Nobody. You look at the past 4 or 5 years in the Premier League, who's really touched them aside from Liverpool, who challenged them for a few years. They've been on an insurmountable run, and that's because of finances. They're backed by an almost untouchable amount of money. The gully between them and all these other clubs, and the gap that has been created between them and all the other clubs around them, is because of finance. It's not based off what they've achieved on the pitch. Back in 2008 when they were taking over, they were in just average side, not much history about them. Fast forward 12, 13 years later, they're in the Champions League semifinal for the second time in 5 years, right? So that's why Manchester City and Chelsea, who've been really successful in the last decade, felt not the need, because if you ask them, they wouldn't have wanted to, but they saw an opportunity.
They saw the backlash.
They saw the backlash, exactly. So they said, we don't need it as much as the other clubs. That's why they pulled out, in my opinion.
It's good you mentioned the PR thing, because in my personal opinion, that's the main reason clubs like PSG and Bayern Munich and Dortmund and Leipzig didn't enter.
Yep.
Let's look at it this way. Red Bull Leipzig did not exist before 15 years ago. Right. They came in with purely monetary value. They have no history whatsoever. Of course, they're going to want to make money. But in Germany, as people may know, there's a 50+1 rule where the fans own a 51% stake of all whatever, no matter what happens in elections, 51% of the votes will go to the fans. So if the fans say, we don't want this, then the fans will get what they want. So, of course, Bayern's going to say, oh, yeah, we're not even going to entertain that, because you know that you're going to lose the debate. You know you're going to lose the debate. You know they're not going to want you to go there. Right. And PSG, let's quickly talk about PSG. Qatar is hosting the World Cup in 2022. Qatar, a place that is 55 degrees Celsius in the summer, a place that is fully impossible to play football in. They're hosting the World Cup. Because of this, because of the weather, they're forced to host the World Cup in the winter. Do you truly believe that Sepp Blatter did not take any bribes to give Qatar the World Cup over the likes of Germany, France, and England, uh, literally any nation in the world that's actually habitable, that first of all habitable. This country didn't even have stadiums. The city was built in the desert, and the city runs on slavery. The country is based on slavery. These people own their. I can't stand FIFA because this right here, their issue with the Super League is because they're doing exactly what FIFA's been doing to people for generations at this point, and UEFA has been doing people for generations. What we've been talking about for a long time with UEFA is the Champions League became the Champions League in 1992, right? It's labeled the Champions League, but how come we only have countries that represent England, France, Germany, Spain, Holland, Italy, etc., etc.? We don't have champions of every European team. We have 4 teams from England, 4 teams from, and listen, don't get me wrong. I understand that there's, an imbalance. England has about 6 to 7 good teams. Albania may not. But how is it fair to call it the Champions League if you don't have the champions in it?
Exactly. Why do
you're already?
Go on. Why does Celtic every year win not except for this season, obviously, but the ongoing tradition of Celtic, the Champions League, aside from a couple good years here and there, would be make it to the qualifying rounds and not even surpass that, and not even fail to get to the group stage, essentially. Why don't they get automatically placed in the group stages? The Champions League isn't what it's made out to be. It's you get the third place team in the league who didn't win any trophies in the season in England, and that's like, well, you can go in without any real harm in your way of actually reaching the group stage. But for champions of other smaller nations with the coefficients, they have to actually grind through the qualifiers, and that's just what's the incentive of actually being called the Champions League when you don't even really benefit the actual champions of some of these smaller leagues, right?
100%. And I mean, listen, I can only speak on behalf of myself as a Milan fan from this point of view, and I've got to look at it from all angles and sides, right? As a fan, obviously, I was heartbroken when the Super League news came out. Milan has been on a decline for many, many years at this point, right? Milan's been going through the dumps. I've been watching year after year with my team not making the Champions League, my team not making top 4 due to TV rights that the Serie A have not been able to obtain for its league. I've been watching my club run through the mud, right? For the first year in a very long time, we're in second place. We're still, although Inter is more than likely probably going to win the league, we're still in contention. And with only 8 points. And if you told me that 3-4 years ago that we'd be 8 points from first place, I would say you're lying, right? So from that point of view, I'm heartbroken that, we couldn't. We were so close to finally hearing that Champions League anthem, seeing Maldini in the sidelines watch the team after all the years of him watching this team be destroyed, seeing him watch the club prosper again. Like that broke my heart. But on the other hand, Ivan Gazidis and Paul Singer have been brought in to do a specific thing, and it's maximize the brand of Milan. And as much as I, as a fan, am heartbroken that that's the case and the sport is not the sport anymore, it's all business, it's the truth. You know what I mean? Milan, Ivan Gazidis has done a great job in terms of collecting brands. We're in partnership with Rock Nation, with Puma now, with EA Sports, with FIFA 21. We're in a big partnership with them. And he's done what he was asked to do. Like, this is what his job entails. It's just unfortunate that his job is so disgusting and vile that it ruins the sport. But let's not act like UEFA hasn't done this for years. It's just they've been sweeping it under the rug. You know what I mean? Because the most broken rule of UEFA is the financial fair play rule, which was enacted by Michel Platini in 2011, 2012. The financial fair play rule basically states that, like, if you spend, let's say, 50 million, you have to bring in 50 million in revenue, whether it's through ticket sales, jersey sales, et cetera, et cetera. In 2017-18, Milan was bought by a Chinese owner, Yang Hong Lee, and he spent close to 200 million on transfers. And it turned out that all of his money was fake. He was actually bankrupt, and he had to sell the club. Because of this, Obviously, we couldn't make the revenue because we didn't have the money, right? But we
Mhm.
spent it still.
Yep.
Uh, so what did UEFA do? They implemented their financial fair play rules. They said, you guys are going to be banned from Europe. You guys are getting a fine uh, because we qualified for Europa League that year. Obviously, that's not a great achievement, but we did qualify for Europa League that year, which meant we would have been in European football.
Right.
But we didn't get it, and that's, it is what it is. But the issue is that Manchester City just last year was exposed for forging financial fair play papers for 5 total years, and all they got was a 30 million. Well, they were threatened that they would get uh, relegated to the fourth division, fifth division. They would be banned from Europe for 2 years. They would get a 200 million fine. What did they get in the end after fighting the case because they had money? A 30 million fine, no ban, no relegation. Just essentially just a slap on the wrist.
Exactly.
Why is it that this rule is implemented for some clubs and not for others? And it comes down to the fact that UEFA has favorites, and the favorites are the people with the money, right? Milan, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich. These clubs have held UEFA on its neck for the last 80 to 90 years, winning Champions Leagues or European Championships, winning titles, building the brand of football. You can go anywhere in the world and people know these clubs because they're winners. You know what I mean? No one will know Man City before 2000. People that played for Man City did not know that there's a club in Manchester other than Manchester United. It's the truth. There's an interview with Mario Balotelli in 2011 or 2012 with Noel Gallagher, and he said, when you signed, is it true that you thought you were signing for Manchester United? He said, yes.
Mm-hmm. It's yeah, and as I alluded to earlier, Manchester City's rise to power. You can't say it's based off of football and getting into the Champions League year after year. No, they've been taken over. They bought a bunch of players. They bought their way to the top, and now after a decade plus, we're seeing it's the fruits of their harvest. We're seeing them in the Champions League semifinal. But is that done with integrity? Is that done with merit? No, it's by having an unlimited bank account that you can afford to get these $30 million slap on the wrist because it doesn't matter. You can buy with a top. And it's what we're seeing to an extent with RB Leipzig, not exactly buying their way to the top. They have a different model of operation. They develop a lot of young players and sell them on. But still, they were not a historic club that's been around since the 1800s and 1900s. They've been around since 2009. So it's the way the sport's going, and it's going to continue to go that way. You see with City Football Group, them acquiring clubs across the world. You see it with Red Bull, them getting the likes of Red Bull branded clubs such as New York Red Bulls and MLS, other clubs around the world. For people to come and scream off to the rooftops and say that football is saved by the destruction of the Super League, it's not. It's the game's been broken for years, as you talked about earlier. It's not saved whatsoever. There's way more problems that we need to fix, and honestly, they're probably not going to get fixed because people are going to see this Super League never got off the ground and they'll be satisfied. But we need to keep pushing on. There needs to be a lot more change if the game wants to truly trend in the right direction for once.
Before I had a question I wanted to ask, but before I go there, I just wanted to quickly touch football didn't win, but these clubs did get the leverage that they tried to because ultimately this league promised them about, let's say, close to 4 billion.
Yep.
UEFA said we can't match this, and then the next day they said, well, no, and they said we can't match this. If you leave, you're gone. There's no half in, half out, right? The next day, the UEFA president Chefrin comes out and says there is still time. People can make mistakes. Yep. That to me shows that you can't survive without these clubs if they're making the money that you deserve, that you want. Sorry, not you deserve. I don't think they deserve it whatsoever. Mm-hmm. That shows to me that they know that they're gonna lose this money, and to say that you're not gonna to tell that these clubs that you're not bigger than football and football's saved, that you're not making the money. At the end of the day, Agnelli had a point where he said the last 80 years, through the three clubs that have been winning Italy are Juventus, Inter, and Milan. Yeah, Napoli won it here and there. Yeah, Roma won it here and there. But these are the teams that you've allowed to dominate the league for years. It's sad, but it's the truth because these are the teams that people have been investing into, right? Um, but we'll probably come back to it. Basically, what I wanted to ask you is, as an Arsenal fan, like
Yeah.
I spoke on my feelings about it. What do you feel overall, from every point of view? I'd say on the Super League, what's happened, how you guys have pulled out.
I think it's honestly hilarious that Arsenal were actually included in this foundation of this league and had the audacity to call themselves a founding member. You look at what they've achieved in Europe over the history of the club. They have done nothing. They've made a Champions League final in 2006. They've lost some European finals along the way. They lost in Baku in 2019. They got embarrassed, quite frankly. They don't deserve to call themselves a founding member of a supposed Super League. It's ridiculous. And going back to what we talked about, Stan Kroenke earlier, he owns Arsenal for purely based off a monetary investment. He doesn't care about the results on the pitch. If he actually did, he would appoint the right people. He would put the right people in charge. We saw what happened after Arsene Wenger stepped down with the club. He brought in Unai Emery. That was a massive mistake. Almost got them to Champions League, didn't work out, and now they've stagnated. They're probably going to end up ninth this season. They face a great risk of not making European football next year if they do not win the Europa League, and that would be a massive, massive. That would set the club back for years. So, Stan Kroenke, he saw the opportunity to make a lot of money off becoming involved in this. He jumped at it at the first instance. If it was up to him, he wouldn't have left, I believe. if he hadn't faced all this backlash and pressure, he would have probably stayed on to the very end. I was honestly surprised to see Arsenal pulled out of the league when they did. I was actually asleep when the announcement happened, so I woke up to Twitter and saw they left, and I was pretty surprised. But yeah, it's not surprising at all. Seeing where the club is owned by and seeing where it's gone in recent years and seeing where it's projected to go. I'm not surprised that Arsenal were one of the founding members of this league. It's, not surprising whatsoever.
As an Arsenal fan, would you have wanted this league to go through or no?
No, because I'm more than an Arsenal fan. I'm a football fan. I want to see the best for the game and a closed barrier system with no promotion, no relegation. It's basically a continental league that's akin to the NHL or the NBA or the NFL, these North American leagues where there's no promotion, relegation. There's nothing. There's no There's nothing that'll punish you for having a bad season. You can play in the Super League for years on years on years, collect checks, but you wouldn't face any repercussions for coming in 12th or 15th or how many other teams there are. That's terrible. It's all about finances, and that's what it's exposed to be in the last couple of days. And that's what it was from the start. The clubs didn't want to admit it on Sunday when they came out with the announcement, but they've taken a couple steps back, said we made a mistake. If the Super League ever rears its head again in the future, which I will, I think there's going to be reforms to it. I think they're going to try to get it up again, but I honestly don't know how they will because we've seen what's happened since Sunday. I don't see how they're going to try to save face and make something even remotely close to what the Super League was originally intended to be. I don't see how they could come back from this. If anything, there'll be more changes and reforms to the Champions League, which would be great, but I don't see how the Super League can resurface in any way going forward.
It's really interesting you bring that up because what everyone has missed amidst all this disaster that's unfolded in the last few days is that UEFA also announced, changes to the UEFA Champions League starting in 2024. And if you look into it, they fully announced a rule called the legacy team rule, where basically what it states in layman's terms is that if Manchester United were to get sixth in the league and West Ham were to get fourth, West Ham would be moved down to the Europa League, and Manchester United, because of their higher coefficient, I can't even speak. Coefficient would be moved into the Champions League. This is essentially the exact same thing that the Super League is doing. So everyone that's fighting to abolish the Super League is wrong, UEFA is in the right, blah, blah, blah. You got to realize what you're truly fighting for here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the Super League is wrong. The Super League is a cancer to football. The football was already dead and gone. Football is broken beyond repair.
Yep.
Beyond repair. If you think that going back into the Champions League where only the league makes the money off of you rather than the teams make the money that are generating this revenue week in and week out, like, use the common sense, right? And it's with all due respect, because obviously it's not going to be fair to compete in a league championship when only the best teams have the money. But that's what's happening right now anyways, and they don't even get enough. Let's look at the fact that in England, Norwich City, who's just getting promoted to the Premier League this year, are going to be getting more money this season coming into the Premier League than the winner of the Champions League final, one of the most watched games of the year in sports, like one of the most watched sporting events of the year. Norwich City is going to get more money than them. AC Milan, a brand. Sorry, I'm just going to finish this off really quickly, just from my point of view, because this is something that's bothered me for so. And me and you have talked about this. This conversation that we're having right now, me and you, Bowen. Yeah. We've had this for weeks now. This isn't like a new talk. This isn't shocking that's happened. Like all of this that's unfolded. Me and you've talked about the fact that AC Milan, one of the biggest brands in football, like every player dreams of playing for Milan at one point or another. We had the likes of David Beckham, Ronaldinho, Paolo Maldini, etc., etc. AC Milan, for finishing second place this year, will get a total of 50 million euros. Sheffield United last year got double what we get. Sheffield United, the team that already got relegated to the championship. Mm-hmm. And this comes down to a lot of Serie A's fault of what they're not. Ultimately, Italy is not portrayed in the best light in sports. Italy is notorious for racial abuse to fans. Why would these players want to go there? Look at Lukaku, one of my rivals' best players. Inter's fans have been proven to racially abuse Lukaku. Inter's fans, not opposing fans, Inter's fans are racially abusing their own best player. You know what I mean? Why would people want to invest in Italy? Why would people want to invest in the TV rights of Italy? Yeah. There isn't really a reason, but it's just, that's why I understand why Milan had the interest to go into this league, because no one is going to invest into Italy. Italy's a dead nation. With all due respect, Italy's a dead nation. It's being carried by the likes of Juve, Milan, and Inter.
Yeah, and that's what you alluded to earlier. I honestly think this Super League, what it might lay the foundations for is in, let's say, 15, 20 years, a generation from now, clubs are going to look at how, as you talked about, Norwich City are making a lot of money. Teams at the bottom end of the Premier League are making a lot of money just based on being in the Premier League, because that's a league with a lot of worldwide appeal. It has massive TV contracts, TV rights that are divided up to the clubs. So it doesn't matter if you're, obviously there's a discrepancy from what the top end teams receive based on winning the league, Champions League places, whatnot. Still, as you talked about, these smaller clubs who have no right in making so much money as they make. They just make it off based upon being in the Premier League itself. So I think what we're going to see going forward is other European leagues are going to look at this and say, we need to do the same, or else we need to get more money for our clubs in our league, or else the Premier League teams, a league where there's six, we call it the Big Six, where there's six teams that fight for this 4 Champions League places. Who knows? In 10 years, there could be 2 more Manchester Cities that pop up, and it'll be 8 teams fighting for 4 places. And then other leagues across Europe will say, we can't even compete with these guys in England because they just have all the resources available to them. So I think that's a big part of why all these other non-English based teams jumped on board, is because they saw that financial incentive. They said, boom, this is a massive opportunity. Obviously the backlash outweighed that, and it's crumbled before it's got started. But I think that's going to be a big talking point going forward, is how can other leagues kind of level the playing field with all the money that's coming into England? How can they get some of that piece of that pie over to themselves? That's going to be a big talking point. Yeah, for me in the next 10, 15 years. And these conversations have probably been going on already, but they're going to get a lot more serious now, I think. So, yeah.
Can I quickly call someone out?
Mm-hmm.
Gary Neville. I have an issue with Gary Neville. And here's what it comes down to. Gary Neville is being patronized to the highest extent right now for as the king of saving football, as the man that spoke out against the big suits and this that. Gary Neville doesn't give a excuse my language. Gary Neville doesn't give a shit about what happens. I promise you. Sky owns the Premier League, owns the Champions League. Do you know who would want to have the big teams play in? The Premier League and the Champions League, not the Super League. If Sky owned the Super League, you would not see him talk right now. If Gary Neville was a footballer, you would not see him say a word. With all due respect, a lot of players have come out and say we don't like it, right? And that's respectable because they like competition. But there's a lot of players that truly do not care because they're going to get the money that they're getting. You're offered 450 million for only signing up. For only signing up, you're getting 450 million. So I have an issue with the fact that Gary Neville is being labeled as this like savior and this, that, and the other. Gary Neville doesn't care. He's acting like he cares, but he does not. And I'm tired of people saying that he's this. Gary Neville to begin with, Gary Neville was not this great footballer that everyone makes him out to be, with all due respect. Gary Neville was a good footballer, a good servant to Manchester United, with all due respect, but he was not this fantastic like game winner that everyone like is making him out to be right now. Gary Neville is the same guy that got fired by Valencia for one of the worst managerial stints I've seen in recent memory. Gary Neville is not a great person for this brand. There's a lot of people that, I liked the statement coming out from Patrick Bamford, who said, it's really interesting how the second you touch someone's pockets, people are talking a lot more, but when it's an issue about race, we're silent, right?
Yeah.
Because all we can do when it's race is we give a moment of silence to Black Lives Matter, which I fully respect Wilfried Zaha that he stopped kneeling for this or whatever it is. He stopped interacting with this because he's on his own. He doesn't believe that that's, in his personal opinion, what will help this situation. Mm-hmm. This isn't the be all end all solution. But what these corporations and these federations are doing is saying, yeah, we'll give you a moment of silence. We'll give you a badge on the shirt. We'll post about it on social media, but that's as much as we can do. But the second you tell them they're going to lose the money, yeah, but I mean, you guys can't play then. But but we're not allowed. Get a hold of yourselves, guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's gross. And there's something that I found out like a couple days ago, and it was very under the radar. I don't even know if you've heard about this, but in Africa, Gianni Infantino, the current president of FIFA, actually endorsed an African Super League. So essentially, this is exactly like the European Super League, or the ESL as it's being known as. It's just teams like Al Ahly, Zamalek, all the big African teams would be competing just like the Super League would. And all of these smaller teams in Africa would be left in the dust. So essentially the exact same thing that's happening in Europe, right? But the issue is that Africa doesn't make the money for FIFA. UEFA doesn't make money off Africa. So of course they're going to endorse it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you really believe that FIFA is doing this for the love of the game, you're rudely mistaken. Rudely mistaken.
And that's, I was going to allude to, you're talking about Gary Neville, and I'll touch on that briefly, but if Gary Neville is such a man who is talking about the game as being gone and it's not a working class game and how football is ruined, he sure likes to take a stance on this issue of the Super League. Have we really heard much from him coming out of what's going on with Valencia, with how their club's being terribly managed in recent times? How they made a rise in the last couple seasons in La Liga, but now this season they're not in the relegation zone, but they're flirting with relegation. And they're a big club in Spain, and it's been a terrible situation for them. Have we heard a lot from him on that situation? No. But when it comes back to the Premier League, when it comes back to club like Manchester United, that's where he gets home from him. And fair enough, he played there. He was only manager at Valencia. He doesn't have that strong ties. But for him to be so outspoken on this, why aren't you so outspoken on other issues, right? So that's where I saw his big rant. He's being applauded by people all over social media, all over the footballing world. I just don't see it as sincere as a lot of people make it out to be personally.
Yeah, 100%. Um, yeah, is there anything you want to mention about the African Super League that was
Well, just we go back to talking about FIFA, and again, people are saying yes, FIFA, yes, UEFA. No, look at read about the upcoming World Cup. Read about how it's being built. It's being built on blood money. It's not sincere at all. It's quite frankly ridiculous to even have a World Cup in Qatar in the first place. I understand FIFA wants to grow the game internationally. I understand that. That's why they placed a World Cup in South Africa. That's why they're placing it in Qatar. Um, it's not. South Africa didn't need a World Cup. Yes, it gave them tourism. They fell way short of that estimated number back in 2010. They're footed with these massive bills for stadiums. It's a common trend among nations who host World Cups. This is another this is another episode in and of itself. But honestly, the World Cup going forward, it has to be going towards nations that already have the infrastructure in place, because we saw with Brazil, they're facing a massive crisis coming out of hosting the World Cup financially. Um, Qatar, they're going to host it for a month, maybe longer, based on how it's being scheduled. But it's gonna come and it's gonna go, and there's gonna be not much after, and they're gonna be so left with these massive, expensive stadiums and a lot of debts, and it's ridiculous that they host a World Cup. So yeah, anybody pointing praise at UEFA or FIFA in this matter, no, go 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 do some research, because FIFA's not the good guy. FIFA's very bad, and as he talked about at the beginning of this, yeah, there's no winners in this situation. This Super League is just exposed a lot of cracks that people thought were papered over. It's a very exposing event and a very exposing year in the last year with the pandemic. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
For those who don't know, there's like a very informative video if you want to learn more about like FIFA as a whole, of John Oliver, but it's like a 15-minute video where he talks about the issues that FIFA bring together, because FIFA defines itself as a non-profit organization, but yet makes billions of dollars yearly, and it's just like a rainy day fund sitting in the bank. You know what I mean? But they're a non-profit. They don't make any profit. How does that make sense? You know what I mean? Because let's be clear here. Russia, Vladimir Putin bought the World Cup for Russia. And it's his business, unfortunately. That's how the World Cup's been run, but it's being portrayed as if it's, a random bid. It's not true. Never has been. Qatar, I don't know a single person that can name me one Qatari club.
No, no,
There's no footballing. The footballing history they have is that Xavi went there for money.
Yeah. Qatar, honestly, in the World Cup next 2022, yeah, they'll play games. They're not going to do well at all. Like, it's there's nothing nice about that upcoming World Cup. I don't think there's a single thing that's good about it. Like, it's the World Cup. It's a footballing spectacle. It's all that. No, it shouldn't be played in Qatar. It's actually ludicrous, the fact that it's got to this point. FIFA, obviously, it's too late now to lay down the hammer and say, no, we're not allowing you to host it here. We're coming up on a year and a half, just over a year and a half away from it. They're not like that ship has sailed, right? Like, they can't turn back. They're just gonna have to go ahead with it. What's interesting to me with that situation is we've seen a bit of a pushback and a bit of talk from players, but is there actually going to be any real action? We've seen players wear shirts. We saw what the Norwegian national team did. Are any players actually going to say, no, I'm not playing? Are any players going to actually sit out? That's when that's where I'd see a bit of change. But for right now, it's just been a lot of talk and no action. So that's going to be something I'm going to look forward to keep my eye on regarding the upcoming World Cup is if players actually take a stand and say no, even if they're qualified, even if they're in, no, I'm not playing. That's going to be a big talking point for sure.
To me, it's hilarious that whole situation that unfolded with people were like the Norwegian national team, German national team wearing that shirt saying no to whatever.
Yeah.
With all due respect, these teams' jerseys are sponsored by Nike.
Mm-hmm.
Nike is notorious for sweatshops in Asia that make these jerseys. So you're against this, but you're still going to wear the merchandise that children are forced to make for much less than regular salary.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just very selective what people's I don't know, maybe I'm wrong to say this, but I'm not appreciating the selective, activism for one but not for the other from footballers. Like, and on top of that, like you see the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Bruno Fernandes, et cetera. You don't see a word out of them. These guys are the face of the sport. You know what I mean? Like these are the people that are. I want to be like them when I grow up. I turned on Ibrahimovic. With all due respect, I'm slightly disappointed. Well, I guess I can't really say that because he doesn't know what the hell's going on, right? He doesn't know. He's not in charge of the Super League. Because even Paolo Maldini before the game right now came on and said, I had no idea I was not informed of any information about this Super League, right?
Yeah.
It's an issue when I know as much as technical director of AC Milan, Paolo Maldini, on Sunday afternoon about the European Super League. That's an issue in football. You know what I mean? That shows that there's a disparity between the suits and the people that actually run the club.
Yep.
The people that sign the players, the people that bring the tickets in, the jersey sales, sell out the games, etc. Like those are the people that build the club on the principles that Paolo Maldini was raised on. Paolo Maldini was born and molded into Milan. Like he defines what Milan is about, fighting for your name, right? And ultimately, the Super League does not give you that right. You don't fight for your name. You're given your name, and that's it, right? And listen, as much as it's terribly selfish to say this, I'm almost a slight bit gutted that this didn't happen only because of UEFA just getting away with it again.
Right.
Just fully getting away with it. And if, right now the clubs that are, even Juventus, who, as you may know, Andrea Agnelli is their president, I guess. Andrea Agnelli is one of the masterminds behind the Super League alongside Florentino Perez, Joel Glazer of Manchester United, and Stan Kroenke of Arsenal. They're really the masterminds of this, wanting to incorporate an American style of sports because Americans have, eaten it up. Like the Super Bowl gets how many views a year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course they would want that kind of viewership.
Exactly.
Yeah. But sorry, I'm just going to quickly finish off this point. I'm almost a slightly bit upset that Milan, didn't really get it. At the end of the day, I'm still hoping we finished in the Champions League spot now. I'm hoping, we are allowed to compete in the Champions League next year. My personal opinion, what would be the most fair is all the teams that have been involved get a 15 to 20 point deduction.
Yep.
I don't think anyone should get relegated, but I think a point deduction is definitely, feasible. But it's almost not fair to, these players put their heart and soul into the field for these fans and these clubs. Like they know the pride of wearing their jerseys week in and week out, but the suits don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're suffering because of what the suits have done to us. You know what I mean?
100%. And you talked about some potential sanctions. If it were up to you going in the next season, across the various clubs who were first involved in the Super League, how would you sanction them? What would you think is fair? What would you think is too far? And would it be money? Would it be point deduction? Would it be banned from competition? What would it be if it were up to you? What would the sanctions? What would you put down?
Well, ultimately, you got to look at every club from a different point of view, right? Not all of them come from the same side, right? Juventus and Real Madrid, you can't look at it in the same point of view. Look at the statement that Juventus came out with. They said it just seems like it's not a good idea right now, rather than we're sorry. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Meaning they still plan on doing this when they have a chance. Andrea Agnelli is not giving up here, right? And this is, and maybe this is, wrong of me to bring in my allegiances into this, but I've been saying this for years because this isn't new to me. I've witnessed Juventus do this for years. Juventus was relegated already for match fixing for a very long time. They were dragged through the mud, and rightfully so, for what they did in Calciopoli. That's the main reason why Italy can't get these TV deals.
Yeah.
Why on earth would you want to sponsor a league that just promotes cheating, right?
Right.
And, I'm not going to say that it's confirmed because it isn't, but in my personal opinion, I don't think it ever ended, right? If you look at some of the things that have happened over the last 9 years, I don't think a lot of the stuff has ended. And the 1 year that Juventus is, on the verge of not even making a Champions League spot,
Exactly.
of course he would want this, Of course he would fight for this as much as possible.
And
he said something about a blood pact being signed. You know how ridiculous that sounds?
Yeah. Well, and Juventus also have to foot the bill of Cristiano Ronaldo's wages. They have a massively bloated wage bill. They're a team, their club rather, that's not headed in the right direction. They're not going to be able to retain the Serie A this season. From all accounts, and it looks like Inter's got the title on lock, basically. Inter's another situation in and of itself. We've talked a lot about the Italian side of this, but yeah, Juventus in a year where their title streak is going to come to an end, where they're knocked out of the Champions League in pretty embarrassing fashion. They see an opportunity where they need to make money. They know Cristiano Ronaldo, he's a great player, but he's only getting older. How much longer can he produce? They see themselves in a position where they might be missing out on the Champions League entirely this season. Maybe in the next couple of years, they'll be a club in decline. It sure looks like that. So it's not surprising at all to see them not only jump at this opportunity to join the Super League, but as it crumbles, to see them be very reluctant in leaving. Their statement was not sincere at all. So.
I didn't really answer your question. I just realized about what should be the punishment for this, I'd say. But yeah, like I said, it kind of depends on each club.
Yep.
Do I think it's fair to relegate everyone? No, but I don't think it's, completely unfair to relegate some of the teams. Florentino Perez kind of has it coming, with all due respect. Juventus and Andrea Agnelli kind of have it coming, with all due respect. Does Arsenal and Milan? I wouldn't think so. And maybe that's just the bias on my part, but I don't think Arsenal, Milan, Inter, who's been struggling financially for a very long time now and just needed a way out, I wouldn't say that they're, not deserving of not being relegated. I'd say a point deduction is the most fair, and that's what I would prefer for everyone to have, because ultimately this is what happens. If a point deduction is given, all the teams that were supposed to make Europe aren't going to make Europe, and which happen to be these 12 teams most likely.
Yep.
And what you're given is what it would have been if they had the Super League. And you're going to see viewership go right down. And that's with all due respect, that's what's going to happen, right? And it's going to go right down. And then the next year it's going to go right back up, because clubs like Manchester United, clubs like Manchester City, Barcelona, Real Madrid, et cetera, they're going to be back in that race, and they're going to bring the viewership right back up for UEFA, and UEFA is going to be smiling and happy, and they're all going to forget about this. But I personally, as a fan of the game, I'll never forget about, the game's been dead, but this was like the nail in the coffin to prove that it's over. Like it's only business, no pleasure anymore,
100%. Yeah, I think if there's a fair way to sanction these clubs that were involved, it would have to be point deduction across the board, banned from European competition. That would be the fairest way to do it. I don't think relegation across the board is. I think it's right. Like they've obviously done a very. I'm not gonna say it's not cruel is not the right word, but they've done a very indefensible act in trying to create this breakaway league. So relegation, I don't think is the right method of punishment, but I think, yeah, showing these clubs that, yeah, you can't participate in the Champions League next year. You're not as big as you think you are. There's other clubs in football. Football will go on without you. Um, I think that's probably the most fair way to do it. Now, if this actually happens, I highly doubt it. I know UEFA is obviously very, very upset with all the clubs that were involved. Will they impose these sanctions? Probably not, because they were supposed to sanction Manchester City um, for their actions a couple years back. Did that happen? No. Slap on the wrist. So they clearly, I think they clearly see different clubs in different lights. Um, will some of the clubs be sanctioned? Remains to be seen, but I don't think all of them will. Definitely not.
Uh, it's it may sound like I'm ridiculing you, but with all due, like honestly, considering the TV rates in England, it's almost better for you as an Arsenal fan to want to, with this point deduction, get relegated, because when you get back up, you're gonna get a cool 130 million that Stan Kroenke can't refuse from you. You know what I mean? If you get relegated, you get the money much more than playing in the Champions League almost.
That's interesting, but I mean, you're still losing a lot. You're like, I feel like the loss would offset the gain in that situation.
It comes down to the fact that Arsenal as an institution has never been relegated past the first division in England, so
Right.
it comes down to a lot of respect for that. But all, it's almost like that's an issue that in England you'd almost want to get relegated. You'd want to go down, because then you could get back up again, like Norwich has just this year, because then you're going to get the 130 million to save you right back up.
But also, if you get relegated and you can't come back up, that's where you can really. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
The Championship is probably
Not
one
an
of the
easy
most
division.
competitive divisions in European.
Not an easy division for 100%. Sure.
So that's a very interesting concept you bring up. I think it's I don't think anybody's getting relegated. I think if anything, it'll be point deduction and potentially a Champions League, a ban or European football ban across European football. This isn't strictly for the Champions League. It also applies to the Europa League. Obviously, with Manchester United, Arsenal in the later stages of that competition, Inter made the final last season. They were part of this Super League breakaway attempt. So I think, if anything, it would definitely have to be a European football ban for a season, maybe 2, point deduction. I think that'd be the fairest way to get it done, personally.
I don't know if there's a little bit more to add, but if there isn't, I just want to quickly. It's a little dark of me to even mention it, but like there's almost a feeling on my end that, like, a conspiracy theory about this, that there's no way that this wasn't thought of. How was it that Florentino Perez didn't account for millions of people to outrage about this? I almost feel that this was planned by the Italian and the English clubs specifically to, mess over the Barcelona and the Real Madrids, because of their constant, domination of the financial and the footballing side of European football, right? I don't know. Maybe it's wrong of me to feel that way, but it's almost looking at like the way that all it took was just some outrage, and then all of a sudden these clubs are like, yeah, never mind, we're sorry,
Yeah, it was very poorly constructed. It seems very rushed, all of it. You see it with the announcements. You see all these clubs putting out club statements one after another, with no foresight, with no warning, no saying this is gonna happen. Then it just comes out of nowhere. That's shows how poorly it was put together. They thought they could just get away with it, and the fans, and like mostly the fans, but pretty much everybody other than these 12 clubs and these 12 owners, they really said no. They pushed back, and that's good to see, because it shows that the fans still do have a voice. As much as we talk about how much the game has gone to greed and finances and the business aspect, no, the fans still have a large voice, and we saw it put on display this week. If the fans could also put their voice towards other issues in football, such as racism, which is much more important than the Super League. Um, that would be needed. It's still needed to be put towards more pertinent issues than this, but it was just good to see that the fans still have a voice to an extent.
Just news actually just came right now. The UEFA Executive Committee is going to discuss sanctions against the 12 rebel clubs with an announcement coming Friday.
Okay.
So we can expect, some news onto what exactly is going to happen to these 12 teams come Friday. And just a little fun tidbit on my end. Right now, Milan's playing against Sassuolo in the 83rd minute, and we're down 2-1 after leading 1-0. And there's our karma for all this, I would say,
Exactly.
in a serious Champions League push, in a serious push for European football. Finally, we're losing a game that we should be dominating in. With all the drama that's unfolded, this is not something I didn't expect. Like you can go on my Twitter at any point, I promise you, and you can see me go, yeah, we're losing this one, boys. We're losing this one. And, it is what it is. Game's the game.
That's what makes the beautiful game beautiful. Any team can beat anybody. And again, we've talked about this a ton. I'm not going to beat a dead horse anymore. But with the Super League, you wouldn't see Sassuolo go 2-1 up on the land because they wouldn't be playing against one another. It'd be so-called European elites. But how can you call yourself an elite club if Arsenal scraped to a 1-1 draw against Fulham, Liverpool draw against Leeds, Milan probably on their way to at least maybe salvage a point, if not lose this game over? It's the audacity of these clubs to call themselves super from the rest of European football. It's a disgrace. So good on Milan for losing this one. Honestly, it just shows the hypocrisy behind it all. It's just been a whirlwind the last couple of days, and there's so much to unpack.
Do you have anything else you wanted to add, or do you want to close this out?
I think we've discussed it pretty thoroughly. We're looking forward to the sanctions that will be set in place supposedly on Friday. We're really looking forward to that. If it has any bearing on this season's current rest of the European competitions, I'd be interested to see that. I don't think it will. I'd assume it'd be set in place for next season going forward, but who knows? It could. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I think we hit all the bases we needed to hit. And if there's anything you want to add at the end here, be my guest.
Honestly, I just kind of wanted to say, like, on behalf of the podcast itself, like, it's been a while since we've kind of come to do this, and due to school, whatnot, so many different moving with COVID, it's much harder for us to record than it is not to record. As much as all it is a Zoom call or a call on Discord. It's not that easy sometimes, right? But we're in the works of making this a lot more consistent. We're gonna try to rebrand as well. We're considering seeing if we're really the No Cap Recap or something more us per se. So
let's call it a name holder for the moment. But
yeah, for now we're sticking with this. But I appreciate anyone that even bothered to listen to this. Considering how long we haven't talked, it's we haven't really earned this. But we're almost like in the Super League. But it is what it is.
Hey, we're back. Pay attention to us.
But yeah, thank you so much everyone for listening, and we'll be back soon. And if there's any news on this, you'll be sure to hear about it from us. Anyways, take care, guys.